Okay, we should be live here shortly. 1, 2, 3. We are live. Welcome back to Real Cast Fishing. Your host, Glenn, with the City Battle Fishing Field Team, COAF Field Team on YouTube. And this round, what do we got for you? Well, we're talking the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. That's where I just go through the a fly fishing book that has some really good tips about fly fishing, specifically for trout. But hey, it works for other fishies. And in this case, I'm going through tips 81 through 85. So we do them in sections of 5. And this round, we're going to do 81 through 85. So I'll start things off. I'll read through it. And then we'll roll right into some particular things to point out. And then we'll just shift over to some general Q&A, ramblings, or maybe some real recent updates from some recent things here. And hey, since it's Saturday, yours truly is going to have a little IPA. So join me with a little IPA if you can. And if you aren't wanting that, get some juice or something. Anyhow, let's go ahead and start out with the first tip, tip 81. All right. You're fishing a dry fly on a smooth flowing stream. You see the rise ring of a feeding trout and are ready to make your cast. At this point, I got to put my glasses on here. It's vital to understand just where the fish really is and where you should place your trout. Okay, where you should place your fly. Correction. To make this judgment, you need to understand a trout's economy of motion as it pertains to hydraulics. Unless chasing a fast-moving meal, trout never hurry. In life's game of calories gained versus energy expanded, slow and steady is the rule. The rhythm works something like this. When a trout sees an insect entering its window of vision, it tips its body upward and allows a current to lift it to the surface and slightly backward, much like a kite in the wind. This means that point at which trout meets the fly generally is slightly downstream from its original holding lie. Distance depending upon speed of current. Following the take, the fish swims back to the comfort of its original watch point beneath the surface. To place the fly properly, you'll need to calculate this holding place, then cast just upstream from the window to achieve the same presentation of naturals in the drift. Your fly must land a yard, perhaps more upstream from where you saw the rise ring. Once you learn the riddle of distance and rhythm, you'll start catching more fish. Hey, signed by KD. Okay, so that makes sense. The trout wants to minimize the amount of energy expended to get his dinner. And in this case, it's just describing how they kind of lay in a particular location in the river. And when it's time to drift up, it'll point itself upward, get the dinner, and then go back down. And so it's kind of telling you to go ahead and cast further. Don't cast to where the trout is sitting, but instead cast further and find that money zone where this trout is basically feeding off what's passing. So hey, it's a good one. It's worked. I've done that on the Blue River. I've done that in Oklahoma's Blue River, as well as over there at Broken Bow. Another thing that I like doing is I definitely like having polarized glasses so I can kind of get a good lay of where that fish is. And like it's saying, fish just upstream from it. Okay, so that was tip 81. Okay, let's go to tip 82, that vision thing. To gauge how to best present fake food to trout, it's important to know how and what they see. The same basic understanding is also vital when trying to approach a fish without being sighted. Books have been written on the subject. In this brief context, it's enough to know that trout view the world out and upward through a cone-shaped window, very narrow at the eye of the fish and progressively broader with the distance of the surface. For a trout holding 6 feet beneath the surface, the oval window is much larger than at 3 feet, and so on. To a trout sipping floating mayflies from a watch point a foot beneath the surface, the window is quite small, Place your fly in a drift that brings it inside this window, and you'll probably get a rise outside. Nothing. You'll probably get a rise outside. Nothing. So if you miss that window, oops, it's probably going to be a miss and you won't get that fish. Precise presentation is paramount for rising trout. All right. Interesting. All right. That was tip 82, and it goes with the first tip where I was talking about basically getting it to a trout in its feeding zone. Well, this is also talking vision-wise to get it into that, I guess, window. And the deeper it is, the larger the cone. Higher up, the lesser the cone. All right, tip 83, timing the rise. While considering placement of a fly so a trout can see it, an angler must take into account the element of casting to a fish rising in a regular rhythm to naturals. This is where timing comes in. The process described earlier in which a trout lifts to eat an insect and then returns to its station requires a brief period of time, perhaps 3 or 4 seconds. During a dense hatch with lots of insects available in the drift, it's relatively easy to note the shortest of these intervals and gauge your presentation accordingly. If you rush the cast, your fly will appear before the trout is ready, perhaps providing an awkward view as it slides past, causing alarm. Wait too long, and the trout likely will have taken a natural instead, causing you to repeat the process with a greater chance you'll spook the fish. So again, it's back to the fish have great vision. Make sure you keep that in mind when you are fishing a particular location and particular fishies. And let me move my little window here so you can read. And so for those that are listening on the podcast, the video portion, I'm showing actual passage from the book and I'm reading from there. And then from at that point, we'll just discuss some key tips and whatnot out of it. And then we'll shift over to some general discussion. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Here, it's showing just a picture of someone catching a fish and then finishing out tip 83. Particularly with fish that receive lots of pressure, it's important to make your first presentation a good one. Take a moment to survey the situation, gauge your rhythm to get the timing right. Okay, another good one from the book. All right, let's go to tip 84 from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. Be a sneak. Knowing what a trout can see affects the way we approach them. Since trout have a blind spot to the rear, an approach from downstream is generally best. There are other considerations, however. The cone of vision as it pertains to the angle of refraction of light means that it's sometimes easier to approach a trout holding in very shallow water or near the surface. That is true only up to a point. The variable comes when an angler is guilty of heavy footfalls along the shore. Interesting, heavy footfalls. That kind of makes sense when you spook a fish as you get closer to the edge of a pond or whatnot. All right, so the variable comes when an angler is guilty of heavy footfalls along shore or making waves or splashing when wading. Trout near the surface are particularly sensitive to vibration, while those in deeper or turbulent waters much less so. A shallow fish may not see you, but it can sense your presence from a considerable distance. Approach with caution. An angler can remove himself from a trout's area of vision by reducing his height. For example, a fisherman wading waist deep or crouching from his knees becomes half as tall. With a stealthy approach, he can shorten the distance of his cast and make a more accurate presentation. Conversely, an angler casting from a high bank should expect to make much longer casts to avoid being seen. Sign CM. And then in the video, or it's showing a picture of an angler, a fly fisherman on his knees, kneeling, and looks like he's trying to cast into a river so he doesn't spook any fish. So, hey, I believe that one. I spooked many a trout. Because, well, I was wading too roughly, stomping my feet too much, or in this case, they got sight of something. And then I do recall, I think it was a fly fishing guide that I met. He suggested also wearing kind of drab colors so you don't spook anything that may be, see those colors and get all flashy looking and spook them. So keep that in your back pocket. Okay, last one for this round. Tips 81 through 85. We're going to end at 85, and then we'll shift to other or shift the subject to open Q&A, or well, some updates that I have as well. So tip 85, off Broadway. When casting to a fish that's visible near the surface on a sunny day, be aware that shadow from your line will cause it to spook. To prevent this, direct false casts away from the fish and on the opposite side from the sun. Only when you get the distance right and are ready for the presentation should you then cast toward the trout. Okay, well, hey, that's another good one to keep in your back pocket. Just don't do a bunch of false casts where it's just flying right over where the trout are lingering. It could spook them. So what it's suggesting is just to cast away or off to the side from where it is, and then only cast at the one cast that you need to get to the trout that's lying below. All right. So that was tips 81 through 85. And at this point, just going to open up to any questions, answers that maybe I can provide. It's just basically an open forum. And if you have anything, definitely just poke it into the chat section. I'm watching it. I can see if anything pops up. And then while we're waiting for anything, I'll just shift over to a particular video that I want to show you. That is a recent happening. Let's see. This was the total eclipse from the other day. All right. And this is pretty interesting. It happened really quick. I sped it up, but you can see that it gets dark, and we're just kind of chilling in the back here. And we did experience the full Monty this round, where it got dark just like night. And then what was interesting is the birds got really quiet. Yeah. So that was it. Maybe they thought it was evening. Maybe they thought it was night or whatnot. And then sure enough, sure after, boom, we got the full sun again. What I also noticed was that intensity of the light. I mean, it was really bright before and after. In fact, all day. And then later on, I went back out fishing, and I think it was one of the local ponds, and I was able to catch some bass or two just playing around with some of the 3D printed lures I've been making. Let's see, right back here, making some different ones. And then I did make a run over to one of the local ponds in our area and did really well on a damselfly. It's the bead chain damselfly. And let me see if I can get that video started. Bear with me. Let's see. This video is where I'm doing the 3D popper that I was mentioning. And that's on that day of the eclipse. And I'll let this one run real quick and describe what's happening, but I'm gonna have to repoint it to the other video where I'm fly fishing the local pond here for some bass. And what was interesting about that was I hadn't fished it in about a year, and sure enough, it was good. It was good to get out there and catch some of these guys, knowing that pond is still a good one. All right, let me see if I can pop it over. Yeah, this is going to be the first fish that I caught on the 3D printed popper. And I wasn't quite sure if I was going to get anything, mainly because well, I hadn't fished it in a year. And oh, by the way, I did notice that sure enough, I did get some good strikes. And what was nice was I did see some V-wakes as the bass were coming in chasing the lure and whatnot. And a steady retrieve worked well. A little poppy retrieve was also working well. But yeah, that's the 3D printed popper that I made. And let's see, there's some other ones there, but I want to get you to the fly fishing one that I did where I'm fishing the local pond here. We call it the pond behind In-N-Out Burger because it's just right behind the In-N-Out Burger restaurant. Bear with me, I'm having a little brewski right now, a little IPA. So do join me in an IPA or two or a beer while we're here. Okay, bear with me. I gotta do some finagling to get to the other video here. Okay, here it is. All right, let me blow it up a little. And what I'll describe for those that are listening on the podcast is this is the pond behind In-N-Out Burger. And what I did was I fished with a damselfly, bead chain damselfly, very easy tie, and it, I don't remember how many fish I caught, but I ended up going back to the video and it started doing a count, and I don't remember again how much it was. I think maybe it was like 15. But anyways, this is that bead chain damselfly. So it's made with 2 plumes of marabou, one tied above the hook bend and then another just with the hook bend, and then you're using a figure 8 tying, tie to secure the bead chain eyes, and that also gives it weight. It does a slow sink, so it doesn't sit on top, but it does slow very nicely, a slow sink, and the bass as well as bluegill will strike. And here, when I'm fishing the pond, I'm fishing at, I'm not fishing or casting far into the pond. Instead, I'm working the areas closer to shore, either at an acute angle or if not parallel, if I can. And in this case, where I've cast to behind me just to cover the water behind me and to check to see if there's anything lurking there. And what's nice about this is in this particular pond, over the years, I've noticed at certain times of the day, the bass will just start circling the shore or near the bank in little mini schools of 3 to 5, maybe 6, about this size right here, and they'll just kind of work their way around. And if you just keep working your way around the pond, you'll eventually hook a couple of them. And it's fun. I'm using a 10-foot 3-weight, and again, that bead chain damselfly. It's the white marabou one that I tie. You can tie it with, let's say, white for the bottom plume and maybe another color for the top one, a brighter one. But I find that just the straight white one has worked over the years. It's got bass, it's got bluegill, it's got catfish. And again, it sinks slowly. I do have my polarized glasses on, so I can sometimes see the actual take of the bass. Other cases, I'm watching for movement of the fly line. So if I see a hesitation in the fly line, or if I see it tug, get pulled, set the hook. And in this case, I didn't bring a strike indicator. What I noticed with this particular pond is I seem to get better strikes when I don't use a strike indicator here. And it's just fishing this particular pond for, well, almost 20 years. So, yeah. Anyhow, there are some larger ones in there that kind of lurk below, but I didn't get anything that big. I think the biggest one maybe went 2 pounds. But that said, what I wanted to do here was just see how the pond was doing and see if the bass population was as good, if not good, as it has been over the years. And then I just wanted to do one of these one fly. I'm just going to take one fly with me, and if I lose it, it's gone. I'll go home. And if I don't lose it, I'll just keep fishing until I make a round around the pond. So I just went around the pond once. It's a fairly nice sized pond. And yeah, it was 15 fish, 2 bluegill, and 13 bass. And I did see some beds, and I ended up catching 1 or 2, I think, off their beds. But for the most part, these were all active movers that I was catching them. And again, with that bead chain damselfly. When I get to the other side of the pond, I'll have to contend with this green, snotty, algae-like stuff. And what I do there is I'll cast past it around the edges or in the holes and hopefully see if I can entice a bass or two. Here I'm still lucking out where I'm on the clear side, where there's none of that greenery there to clobber my fishing fly. And I think, yeah, there he is. Another bass. All right. Bass number 8. All right. And then let's see. This one, again, I'm still working the one side of the pond. And I believe this is a little bluegill. Yeah, I think it's a bluegill. And this one was weird because I cast to the spot. I can feel the tap on it. And it didn't feel like the normal tap that I get with a bass. And so I was like, oh, okay, let me just keep casting again and try that spot. And then this one that I'm bringing in right now, here's where I cast, and I actually saw the fly disappear, and that's what caused me to set the hook. I didn't see the bass. I just saw the fly in the water doing its little floaty, sinky thing, and when it disappeared, I just set the hook, and lo and behold, I got a bass on the line. This is one of the bigger ones for this round. Right here, got a big tail, kind of skinny. I think this next one will be the biggest one. And here I'm having to cast over my offhand shoulder because there's a fence as well as a tree line behind me. And so by casting over the shoulder, I'm able to get it to at least work the clearer areas where all this green stuff is. All right. Put a good bend in the rod. Found them. And I ended up banking them and bringing them up. And I believe this was going to be the biggest one. All right. Okay. Nice. Fun stuff. Okay. Glad y'all were able to join. This was the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing series. We go through tips 81 through 85. Next round, we're going to go through tips 86 through 90. And we'll just keep going till we finish the book. And then we'll probably switch over to, well, maybe another book. All right. 3 poem. That's a good one. All right, cool. Yeah, that was the bigger one of the 15 caught that round. Okay. So with that, we'll do another podcast also. We call it the Rambling, Fishing Ramblings. Someone suggested maybe calling it the Babbling Brook. Anyhow, that one is just more of an open forum where I just start talking and showing maybe a particular thing that's happening in the area or maybe some plans for some upcoming fishing events or trips. But for this one, it's the same format. Go through the book. It's a great book, The Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. I forgot when it came out. I've had it for years. I had the hard book version as well as the Kindle version. And, well, I kind of used the Kindle one because it's very handy, and I forgot where I put the other book. Anyhow, so with that, appreciate y'all joining, and hope to see you again. All for now, and next time, we'll catch y'all later, and good luck and good fishing.